from the time it says live to the time we see it on LinkedIn and Facebook as much as like 15 to 20 seconds. And that's okay, because Restream does a fantastic job of making sure that we're all getting to where we need to go with as few blips as possible. So those of you listening and watching, I am so glad to have you back here today. I am Jess Duell, the host of the Bold Business Podcast and your strategic business advisor. Now, here's the thing. The thing is, I come and I do these live streams every once in a while, and they take different forms. Well, this is a super special day. Not only do we have two guests from the last podcast of the last podcast of season 3 here with me today. This is going to be the beginning of where you get to share your insight and information as well, because not only do we get to learn from Crista and Erik, who are here today, and Jonathan, who's also part of the podcast that you'll hear later this month, we get to learn from each other. We have that opportunity here, and that's what this live stream is all about. Welcome, Erik. Welcome, Crista. I would love for each of you to take a second, well, maybe you know what I mean, a little more than a second, to introduce yourself. And I want to know what you're most excited about, just like right now in this moment after you introduce yourself, which could be totally unrelated to what we're talking about today. Let me just clarify that. How about Erik? How about if you introduce yourself first?
All right. Hello, live stream community. I'm Erik Host-Steen from Denver, Colorado. I run a practice called SMP Alignment, and I fix sales, marketing, and product problems, the ones that are interconnected and require bridging those functional silos. What am I most excited about? I think this is my first live stream, so I can hardly contain myself.
Well, welcome, and I'm glad you are here today with us. All right, Crista.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Crista Grasso. I am creator of the Lean Out Method, and I'm a lean business consultant, and I really help businesses to grow and scale by using a combination of strategic planning and lean business practices. So it's all about achieving more by doing less and making sure that you're focused on the right things. And the thing I am most excited about is I just brought on a brand new member to my team, and he gets started with me this Friday, and that is going to open me up for a lot of growth opportunities next year. So bring it on.
Awesome. I'm telling you what, first live stream, more people. What could be better? What am I most excited about? Besides being here with you today, I'm most excited that it's December 1st, because in our house, we do celebrate Christmas, and the elves have shown up from the North Pole. Rascal and Brownie have arrived, and they are here until Christmas Eve. And so for those of you who know about Elves on the Shelf, it is a drama and excitement all into itself. I'm telling you. And thank goodness we're a little more low key about it. Carter's big enough that he actually moves them around the house and helps with this part of Christmas magic and really winter magic. And I changed my background, by the way. So I still have that same picture, but I don't have those big flowers anymore. I have a forest back there now. It's super exciting. So mine has nothing to do with growth. It has being in this space with you and the small things of what it means to be in winter here at this time with our family traditions. So I want to honor everybody's traditions, and I also want to honor the focus of this month. And shifting into that is like, how do you fit it all in? How do you have things like Rascal and Brownie show up, and your business growing, and problems that you have to solve? And sometimes even when they seem to be small, they end up being pretty complex. And so we have to prioritize, and we might have to prioritize differently. And that's one of the things I really like about the interviews that I had with Erik and Crista, is because they both have this concept about what that vision is and how to be clear about it, how to be planning, and what are some of the steps and the frameworks to actually think about success and how that is. And today, you're going to hear from them answer the same question I'm asking you, our community, our business community. And that is, you've got to stay on priority. So it has to do with staying on priority. So Crista, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want to hear your answer. How can you achieve more with less and ensure you stay focused.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the most critical piece of that you already mentioned, and that is having a really clear vision. And when I talk about vision with businesses, I'm not talking about a vision statement, but I'm talking about that more real clear visual image of what you see in the future. And when I talk about vision, I always think you need to be thinking of three facets. You don't want to just be thinking about what does your business look like in the future, but you have to consider your life and lifestyle, because those two are so tightly coupled when you're an entrepreneur or a small business owner. And I think the third piece of that that's absolutely critical is you also need to be thinking about your customer. And I think when you have that clarity of what does the next 5, 10, 30, whatever number of years into the future look like for yourself, your business, and your customer, it really helps you to stay focused and to make sure that the things that you're choosing to invest your time and energy and finances into are the right things. And so when you have that clear vision, it really helps you answer the question, am I working on the right things? And then I think you need to take that vision and turn it into I don't know if I just lost everybody, so I'm going to keep going if you guys can hear me. Take that vision and turn it into a 90-day goal. And that 90-day goal helps you answer the question, is this the right thing right now? And when you can answer both of those questions, that's how you make sure you are doing, less to achieve more, because you're just focused on those things that really actually matter and make a big difference. Okay, I think everyone's still here. Cool. And then making sure. The next thing is, now that you have that clarity, everybody disappeared on my screen for a moment, and I was like, wait a minute. Once you have that clarity that you're actually working on the right things, then you want to focus on being as productive as possible, right? It's kind of pointless to be productive on things that aren't actually adding value. But when you know what things add value to your customers, you know what things add profit to your business, you want to get as productive as possible. And I think there's different techniques and ways of doing that. My favorite one is to work in focus blocks, which just gets back to your question of how do you stay focused? Well, I think that you try to carve out as much time as possible to dedicate on a group of like activities or a single activity that you can actually start and finish all at once. So that instead of at the end of the week having a whole lot of things half finished, you have your most important top priority things finished first in the week, and you're just moving through. So that is a really quick answer on how I think that you can achieve more by doing less and make sure you're focused on the right things.
Can you believe it? By the way, I didn't know that when we disappeared, we also get muted. So I was trying to give you cues. By the way, this is the other thing you have to watch out for. I found a new button to press. And of course I did it live with everybody here.
Like, am I talking to myself?
It does feel like it sometimes, but no, you are not. I love it. I love it. Okay. So Erik, when you have to do more with less, how do you ensure that you stay on priority?
Yeah, well, the good thing about doing all these button presses when I'm off camera is no one got to see the panic in my face. So I appreciate you hanging Crista out there to dry.
I was not on purpose. There was not supposed to be that, but I apologize.
Well, we got to break this question down into the parts. Do more of what with less of what, and what really means that what really the priorities are. So usually we hear this question and there's an aura of despair or sometimes victimhood that comes along with it. And there's an extreme example of sort of prioritizing and choosing what to do where things just really start to fall apart. And the example I like to use is, let's say you have to choose between eating, drinking, and sleeping. Prioritize those and pick the top two. Things don't end well. So in cases aside from that extreme, we live in a world of constraints, and being crystal clear, it's been talked about already about, you know, what sort of your outcome hierarchy looks like, what your purpose and vision and all these sorts of things are, being clear about the choices that you're trying to make. And I didn't know this before joining this, but we might have some of my notes here are all about lean principles and identifying forms of waste in your life and eliminating them. And the whole I can't get into the details of lean manufacturing and lean philosophy in my 2-minute answer, but that's really a big trick of this, or a big idea of this, which is identifying really what is important and eliminating those things that aren't contributing to achieving those outcomes or goals.
All right. I'm telling you, lean systems, efficiency came through. And both of you started with something that's a little more gray, a little more quasi whatever, which would be the visioning part and understanding. Because while that can be really nebulous sometimes, that clarity that we need in it to get to the parts that you were talking about is key. So if we were to back up, what are the things you look for to make sure that that vision or that objective or that mission is as clear as possible and actually rings true to be able to build on what you shared in your answers?
I'll go. You're right, Jess, that sometimes these concepts of visions or purposes get a little bit too wooby and goofy for people to really sink their teeth in. The good thing is my left brain overpowers my right brain, and I have some ways to make this a little more objective. And it's that famous acronym of SMART, for SMART goals, SMART visions, SMART outcomes, something that's specific, measurable, action-oriented, there's a couple different versions of those acronyms, but getting things specific and measurable and objective might not be so inspiring that it brings tears to your eyes, but it's something to work for and something to aim at a specific target that's much easier for yourself and those around you to help determine whether you're on track or off and what things need to be adjusted.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think the vision is important, and it's intentionally aspirational, right? It's not going to be very concrete because it's more directional. It's kind of, where do you see yourself going? But those goals, they need to be specific and measurable. So I think doing your goals or your objectives or whatever that next level down is, that should be much more concrete and much more tangible, because that's what's going to really ultimately inform the decisions that you're going to make and the actions that you're going to take in whatever the coming time period is. Usually I look at that in a 90-day time period.
And I'm listening to you and I'm like, I agree. And I start with my gut brain. Not my left or my right brain, my gut brain. Well, and when we can tune into okay, so now I'm going to ask you, two brainy people who really have a developed brain between the ears. Some people that we interact with, all three of us, lead from the heart first. You two obviously lead from the head first. And I just said I lead from the gut first. And so when you have people like that in a room and we're thinking about priorities, how do you have the discussion about priorities with people who approach the world from totally different places in space and feelings in space?
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, you want to take it first, or you want me to?
Oh, so, I self-diagnose as being emotionally autistic. So I have to work on tapping into my, my gut brain. And it's taken some time in my life to just appreciate that other people approach things from other directions. And I've come to realize that there's no real right or wrong way. I think that where things start to come together is that when those people who have different approaches are singularly focused on one particular outcome, things start to come into focus. And the leadership discipline that comes into play here is just appreciating and being open to other people's approaches, so long as that there's that shared common purpose. I think things, in this concept of not necessarily wanting to be right, but to get it right, these things work together to create really remarkable paths and outcomes along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one thing I'll say is I think there's pros and cons to each approach, right? So the people who are very logical, very head, driven, right? They sometimes can get really stubbornly tied to doing what they said they were going to do because they said they were going to do it. And they don't always let their gut or heart sometimes tell them when they're actually no longer on the right track. Whereas the gut heart people sometimes aren't actually making sure that the things that they're doing are aligning with where they want to see their business and their life in the future, because they're more kind of making it up as they go along, or they're kind of going where they feel inspired to go in that moment. And it's not always going to take them there or take them there as quickly. So I think both groups can kind of learn from the other. There's a risk to being too much in one of those areas, but there's also a really great opportunity in looking at both to say, what is it that I'm committed to? And I want to stay committed unless there's really some indication that maybe things do need to change. And I think that's where you have to learn to kind of listen to yourself a little bit to say, maybe my priorities have actually shifted, or maybe there's some changes in the market that are causing the thing that I thought I should be doing right now to actually be a little bit different.
Yes. And if we don't have them developed within ourselves, which, by the way, that's one of the things that I really focus on outside of the systems and processes, is what is the capacity to have our head, our heart, and our gut all have a seat at our own internal table. So we don't necessarily just have two little voices in our head or sitting on our shoulders. We actually have that third piece too. And really, I guess it's three on each shoulder, because you're right. Each one has a pro and a con. And one that tends to be dominant can, and there's no stubbornness in this group, none whatsoever. So I don't know why you would have even said that. Both of you and me are all stubborn. We're going to figure it out. We're going to figure out what's happening, and we're going to go forward. And that's the thing. That's actually one of the reasons I started this podcast, because I'm like, I don't care how stubborn you are. I know how stubborn I am. I am going to approach things differently than you. And how cool is it that I get to learn from you, and you get to learn from me, and we get to learn from each other, because sometimes we just need somebody else who thinks a little differently to help us change the paradigm and make a big impact. And I think that's a lot about achieving more with less. When we have a problem, the constraints, to Erik's point, when we've got those constraints, and as long as we understand and we're clear about what the constraints are, I love that. I think there's more freedom in constraints than people give credit for. I think people like to brainstorm without constraints, and I'm like, you can, but then you just have to say no to a whole bunch of good ideas that don't matter right now. They can't fit right now. And so why not start with the constraints? And that makes us be more creative, be more curious, and be more outside the box, maybe, if we're thinking about head, heart, and gut as three ways to potentially say that. So having each of you here with me today, you're complementing my strength. And we get to see a perspective of something about achievement from three different viewpoints here, which is something that I enjoy. Now, I'm going to make a quick pause and say, don't forget, the Bold Business Podcast is publishing all the time, actually, once a month right now. And you can listen to program 253 right now. The program that Erik and Crista are on is program 254. Yeah, 254 programs later, Erik and Crista are here. We are ending season 3 with a bang. Achieve more with less. And there's a survey question that I have put together that is to help prompt you not only share your experiences and your thoughts, but also tell us how you prioritize. And it's a little bit like what Erik did in terms of you're going to want to choose more than one, and you're not going to want to prioritize. But that's the challenge in this particular survey, which is similar to the question that both Crista and Erik answered. The question and the survey that please stop by and answer. It'll be in the LinkedIn feed. It'll be on YouTube. It'll be on, I don't know, all kinds of places that we post stuff out there. When you have to do more with less, how do you ensure you stay on priority? Do you pause and evaluate, simplify your to-do list, set a timer for the tasks, set boundaries? Now, this is even before you get to even all the awesome systems. It's how do you make the time to go use the systems that you have in place? So, community, it's really important. I'm talking to you, viewers and listeners. Stop by. What do you do? What are the experiences you have? Do you have a lesson from doing something that didn't work out well that we could learn from? I know I want to know. I'll speak for Erik and Crista that they want to know too, because it's all of us together that we get to have more experience without having to do it all ourselves. If I knew some of the things I knew before I did them because somebody said, hey, Jess, watch out for whatever this I'm telling you about. I see you headed down this path. Even though I might not have listened, I would have appreciated the heads up, because then when I got there, I would have been like, oh, that person knew what they were talking about and they were trying to help me out. And that's what we're doing here. Can you think of a story like that for you, Erik and Crista, that somebody who said, hey, I see where you're going, watch out for this pitfall, and you went, thanks, and kept going anyway?
Specifically, it's hard for something to come to mind, but what comes to mind in this conversation is those sort of one of the Stephen Covey habits of sharpen the saw. And I think it was Abraham Lincoln that was told, like, if I was given 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'd take 4 hours and sharpen the axe. Right. And there's value in sort of learning by doing. But when you have advisors around you that can say, that's a dumb way to do that, you might do this way. And it's a smarter way to do things with folks sort of watching and coaching along the way.
Yeah, I definitely echo that, Erik. I think that it's so important to surround yourself with people who've kind of been there, done that, and who can help you see those pitfalls before you step into them. And just to answer your question, I think if I just look back, I would have hired a coach quicker. I wasted a lot of time spinning, trying to make things up on my own and trying to be 100% unique and different in absolutely every single thing that I did. And while that came from a good intention, it actually slowed me down pretty significantly. And as soon as I got some coaching support and had, feedback from somebody who had been there, done that, and was able to say, why aren't you just doing this, which was a much simpler solution, it really accelerated my results and just my time in getting to where I wanted to go.
Yeah. When I start working with somebody, I have 3 pillars that I work with. One is the, what are you going to be the best at? Because we can't be the best at everything, to Erik's point about constraints. One is, where do you actually make your money? And what does the profit center look like for that? And how do you get there? And, the third are the vision, mission, and values, because every decision we make has to have those included, because if we're out of alignment even once, we'll get off track a lot more. I don't, it's almost like using a compass. And Nick has something to say. My dog has something to say about using a compass, apparently, as well. If you're off just a little bit at first, you may not really think you're too off track and you can adjust, but you keep going without any adjustment. You just keep going because you think you know what's going on, and you end up in a very, very different spot than originally intended. And so that is the triad that I use to really create a foundation for what systems work, what frameworks work, how do we show up and make decisions as a leadership team, because the decisions as a leadership team will make what part of lean, what part of agile, what part of, what part of efficiency makes sense to focus on. I didn't mean to leave you speechless.
Is there a question?
There's that. I didn't mean to leave you speechless. Oh, that's interesting. So I can't wait to hear. I can't wait to hear what our community has to say and has to share about their thoughts. I've picked some things from your interviews, Crista and Erik, and that we'll be sharing. So you don't have to answer this question because you already have. We had that great conversation and it turned into this amazing podcast that I cannot wait. I cannot wait. I tell everybody each podcast is my favorite, and it's absolutely true, because it's the thing that I'm working on right now that I know can help businesses grow. And that's really key. All right. So as we're wrapping up, I know we were talking about some very specific things, but I want to know, is there anything that kind of bubbled up that didn't really have a place to insert during our conversation that makes sense to add right now? Because if it showed up in your head, it's worth saying out loud. That's my theory.
Nothing for me.
jump on our guy, good friend Simon Sinek, right? Begin with
Yeah.
your why. It's the you know, when you have that clear, so many other things fall, from my experience, just fall into place.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of this gets so much easier.
That's right. We spend the time up front with the design. We get to move way faster or much faster, whichever is grammatically correct. Maybe there's even a different word. Which one is it, ladies and gentlemen? Lady and gentleman. Say it again.
Go slow to go fast.
Go slow to go fast. It's all about prioritization. That's right. Think ahead, think a lot. All right. Okay. So question one more time for everybody else. The poll will be out. Listen and comment on the poll. Listen and comment on our live stream right here. Listen and comment on YouTube or LinkedIn, wherever you see this. We will be gathering your responses and sharing that in our community post of tips that comes out at the end of the month. And that question is, when you have to do more with less, how do you ensure you stay on priority? Thanks so much for sharing. Crista, thank you. Erik, thank you. I am appreciative of both of you and the time we've gotten to spend together today and the extra added value that all of our watchers and listeners are going to receive from having you here today with me.
Thank
Thanks so
you,
much.
Jess.
Yep. Until next